The desert stretched endlessly, golden waves of sand rolling under a sky as clear as glass. For years, travelers and wanderers spoke of something hidden beneath those sands, something ancient and alive. They whispered of a pyramid unlike any other, buried for centuries until a storm uncovered its dark stone walls. The story spread fast. Traders in dusty towns told of explorers who went inside, only to vanish. Guides swore they saw torches flare within the pyramid at night, but no one ever came out. Locals gave it many names: the Black Mouth, the Stone Beast, the Swallower of Men. Some laughed at the tales, but most refused to go near it. It was into this land that a man named David arrived. He was not dressed like the other explorers who came with rifles, ropes, and greed. He carried a small pack, a water flask, and strapped to his wrist was a strange device glowing with faint blue light. His eyes were calm, not excited. He did not look like a man seeking gold or treasure. In a small desert village at the edge of the dunes, he sat quietly in a tent while the villagers argued. An old man named Hassan warned him not to go. Hassan's voice shook as he said that no one who entered the pyramid had ever returned. He spoke of his own brother who had gone inside when they were young, swallowed by the shifting walls. Hassan's eyes watered as he begged David to stay away. Others in the village repeated the same fear. They said the pyramid was not made by human hands. They said it moved, and the sands around it flowed like water, hiding and revealing the stone at will. The women of the village whispered that the pyramid was hungry, and that it had eaten enough men to fill 1,000 graves. But David only listened. He did not argue, and he did not smile. When they finished, he simply said, "I will go." The villagers shook their heads. Some muttered prayers. Children peered at him from behind their mothers, wondering what kind of man would walk into the jaws of such a monster. Hassan grabbed David's wrist, pointing at the glowing device. "What is this? A weapon? Do you think fire will save you?" Hassan demanded. David looked at the device, then back at the old man. "It is not a weapon. It is a guide. I did not come to fight the pyramid. I came to understand it." That answer confused them all the more. The people believed explorers only sought gold, jewels, or ancient power. But David's eyes held no greed, only resolve. At dawn the next day, he set out across the desert with 3 companions who chose to follow him. Myra, a desert-born tracker with sharp eyes, carried a bow across her back. Samir, a man of strong build, carried ropes and tools. Toma, the youngest, brought food and water, his heart full of both fear and curiosity. The 4 of them moved through the endless dunes, following the stories until at last they saw it. Rising from the sand like a black tooth was the pyramid. Its stone blocks were massive, scarred by time, yet no wind seemed to wear them down. The air around it was strange, heavy, as if the desert itself held its breath. Toma felt his legs weaken. He whispered, "It feels alive." And in truth, it did. The pyramid loomed not as a ruin, but as something waiting. The entrance yawned open, dark and silent. No guards, no doors, no sign of those who had gone before. It was as if the desert itself had shaped a mouth, daring them to step inside. Samir dropped to one knee and pressed his hand against the sand. "Even the ground is strange here. The sand does not shift like normal." Myra narrowed her eyes. "We should not go in without a plan." David's calm voice broke the silence. "There is no plan that can stop the unknown. But I believe this pyramid is not just stone. It is a machine, and machines can be understood." He lifted his wrist, showing the glowing device. "This will help me read its movements. If it breathes, if it shifts, I will know." His words gave them little comfort, but his certainty made them follow. Together, they approached the entrance. The heat of the sun fell away as shadows swallowed them. The air inside was cool, yet heavy, and the sound of their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the stone was listening. Behind them, the desert wind began to rise. Sand hissed against the outer walls. Slowly, silently, the entrance behind them shifted, closing without a sound. By the time they noticed, it was already gone. The four explorers stood in the dark, their torches flickering against walls carved with strange symbols. Thomas swallowed hard, his heart racing. The stories were true, he whispered. The pyramid does not let go. And though David said nothing, his eyes shone with both fear and determination. He had not come to run. He had come to face the truth of the pyramid that swallowed explorers alive. The silence inside the pyramid was unlike anything they had ever known. It was not the silence of an empty cave, nor the hush of a desert night. It felt heavy, pressing down on their ears, as if the very walls listened to every breath they took. David raised his torch and studied the passage ahead. The walls shimmered faintly, not with gold, but with the polish of stone too smooth for human tools. Strange carvings twisted across the surface, symbols shaped like spirals and lines that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Samir touched the stone, then quickly pulled back his hand. "It is warm," he said, his face pale. "Stone should be cold in the dark, but this feels like skin." Myra kept her bow ready, eyes darting across the shadows. The desert people were right. This place is alive. David did not argue. His device glowed on his wrist, its light pulsing in rhythm with the faint tremor he felt beneath his feet. He listened closely, then said, "The pyramid moves, but not at random. It has a pattern, like breathing." They walked deeper into the passage, the floor echoing under their steps. Toma trailed behind, clutching his torch tight. His young eyes caught movement in the stone shadows sliding along the walls, though none of them cast them. He whispered a prayer under his breath but dared not speak louder. Soon, they came to a wide chamber where the floor glistened strangely. Samir uncoiled a rope and dropped it forward to test the ground. The moment the rope touched the surface, the stone rippled like water. Then, with a sound like a sigh, the floor swallowed it whole. The rope vanished, leaving nothing behind. Thomas stumbled back, fear racing through him. "It eats," he gasped. "The ground eats." Myra's face was grim. No wonder no one came back. David studied the floor carefully. His device flickered, showing faint lines across the chamber. He realized the room was not a trap waiting to be triggered, but a system always in motion. The floor shifted between solid and liquid, waiting for anything to test it. "This is not hunger," David said softly. "This is a machine doing what it was built to do. But it does not react the same way to everything." He pointed to narrow stone ridges crisscrossing the chamber, faintly raised from the floor. "Those paths may be safe." Samir shook his head. "And if you are wrong? Then the pyramid will decide our fate," David answered calmly. The group hesitated, but there was no other choice. Behind them, the passage had already closed. The walls shifted with slow groans, sealing the way back. The pyramid was guiding them forward, whether they wished it or not. Myra tested the first ridge with the tip of her arrow. The stone held firm. She nodded, and David stepped onto it, moving with steady steps. Samir and Toma followed, their breaths shallow, their eyes fixed on the floor that seemed to breathe beneath them. As they crossed, the chamber pulsed with a strange rhythm. The stone shimmered, and the carvings along the wall seemed to lean toward them, like faces pressing out of the stone. Toma felt his knees weaken, but Myra gripped his shoulder and kept him steady. At the far end, they reached another passage, the air cooler and heavier. David turned back once more. The chamber behind them rippled again, the ridges sinking into the floor until the entire room became smooth, seamless stone. "It resets," David murmured. "Every path vanishes after it is used. Each person who enters must find their own way." Samir's eyes darkened. "That means no one can follow the same route." No maps, no trails. It is not just a trap, it is a test. The thought weighed on them as they walked further into the pyramid. The passage narrowed, then widened again into another chamber. This one was different. Its walls were lined with carvings that glowed faintly when their torches neared. Unlike the twisting symbols from before, these shapes resembled figures, tall beings with elongated limbs, standing around a great crystal. Myra touched one of the carvings. The stone lit brighter under her hand, pulsing like a heartbeat. The glow spread across the walls until the entire chamber was filled with light. Toma gasped. The glowing lines twisted together to form a map across the wall. But the map did not stay still. Corridors shifted, chambers closed and opened, paths bent like snakes. It was not a fixed plan but a living maze, forever changing. Samir cursed under his breath. We are inside a beast that rearranges itself. There is no way out. But David stepped forward, holding up his wrist device. The glow from the carvings matched the pulse of his device. He pressed it against the wall, and the map shifted again. This time, a single path remained steady, glowing brighter than the rest. The pyramid has chosen a way forward, David said, his voice low but steady. It wants us to go deeper. The others stared at him, fear and disbelief in their eyes. To go forward was to walk willingly into the jaws of the unknown. Yet the walls behind them had already begun to close, pushing them onward. Myra raised her bow, Samir tightened his grip on his tools, and Toma clutched his torch as if it were life itself. And David, calm as ever, stepped toward the path that glowed, leading into the heart of the pyramid that had swallowed so many alive. The glowing path stretched ahead like a river of light across the floor. David and his companions stood at its edge, staring at the strange glow as if the pyramid itself had drawn them a road. The walls still shifted faintly, breathing with quiet pulses of stone, but the light did not flicker. It waited for them. Toma's voice was weak as he whispered, "Why would it show us the way? If it wants to trap us, why not close the walls and end us already?" David's calm eyes stayed fixed on the glowing floor. Because it is not only a trap. It is something else. The pyramid does not destroy without purpose. It guides and tests. Samir frowned, his arms tense around the coil of rope he carried. And what does it test? Courage. Foolishness. Myra kept her bow ready as she scanned the shadows. It tests survival. That is what it has done since the first explorer entered. Without waiting further, David stepped onto the glowing path. His device pulsed in rhythm with the light, confirming that the way ahead was open. The others hesitated, but the low rumble of the walls behind them reminded them they had no choice. Reluctantly, they followed. The path led them through twisting corridors, but unlike before, the walls no longer tried to close. Instead, they shifted around them like waves, opening new passages as they walked. Toma noticed something strange. It feels like it wants us to go deeper, not escape. David nodded. Yes. It has no interest in letting us out. It wants us to reach something at its heart. After what felt like hours, they entered a wide chamber where the ceiling arched high above, covered in carvings. This time, the carvings were clearer. Figures of tall beings stood with their hands raised, surrounding a crystal that glowed like a sun. Lines of light connected their hands to the crystal, as if their energy flowed into it. Myra ran her fingers across the carvings. The stone lit up, and once again the walls shifted into a living map. But this time, instead of showing all paths, it displayed only one, the path they had just walked, glowing bright behind them. The way ahead remained blank, unfinished. David studied it closely. It waits for us. It wants to see what we choose. Samir growled in frustration. This is madness. We are rats in a cage, running wherever it pushes us. David shook his head. Not rats. We are something different. This pyramid reacts to us. That means it recognizes us. The others fell silent. The idea that this ancient structure could recognize them unsettled them more than any trap. Suddenly, the carvings began to change. The glowing map twisted into new shapes. Figures appeared along the walls, shadows of explorers. Some looked human, others alien. They stood at the entrance of the pyramid, walked inside, and one by one were swallowed by shifting corridors. Their torches dimmed, their paths closed, and they vanished into the stone. Toma's face went pale. These are the ones who came before. It remembers them. The whispers began then. Soft at first, like wind slipping through cracks. Words formed in languages none of them knew, voices echoing across the chamber. The whispers grew louder, weaving together, filling the air with 100 voices speaking at once. Myra raised her bow, heart racing. What is it saying? David closed his eyes, listening carefully. Though the words were strange, he caught a rhythm, a pattern repeating again and again. Warnings, he murmured. Fragments left behind by those who were swallowed. Their voices are trapped in the stone. The thought sent chills through the group. The pyramid had not only taken the lives of explorers but their voices, their memories, their very thoughts. Samir clenched his fists. This is no place for men to walk. We should not be here. But David's eyes narrowed with determination. That is exactly why we must be here. If the pyramid holds what is left of those before us, then it is not only a beast. It is a prison of knowledge. And knowledge can be broken open. As he spoke, the whispers grew louder, almost desperate, as if trying to answer him. The crystal symbols on the wall pulsed with new light, shaping themselves into a single line that pointed forward. The path ahead revealed itself at last, glowing faintly in the chamber's far corner. Thomas shivered. It heard you. David lifted his torch, his face set in calm resolve. It has always heard us. It wants something only we can give. The group followed him toward the new path. Their footsteps echoed across the chamber, and the whispers faded into silence. The living map dimmed behind them, leaving only the faint glow of the path ahead. As they walked, Toma could not shake the image of the shadow figures vanishing into the walls. He whispered to himself, will we be the next voices it traps? No one answered, but the thought weighed heavily on them all. The passage grew narrower, the air cooler, the pulse of the walls stronger. The pyramid no longer felt like a place of stone but like the inside of something alive. Every step carried them deeper into its heart, where no explorer had ever returned. David walked at the front, torch raised high, eyes sharp with both caution and curiosity. He knew they were no longer simple explorers. They had become part of the pyramid's story, drawn into the test it had set long before their time. And he knew, with a strange certainty, that what waited ahead was not meant to destroy them quickly. It was meant to measure them. The narrow passage opened into a chamber far larger than the ones before. Its ceiling disappeared into shadows, and its walls were filled with rows of statues. Each figure stood tall, carved from dark stone, their faces hidden beneath smooth masks. Their hands were raised as though in warning or prayer, frozen in silence. The explorers stopped at the threshold. A heavy stillness filled the air, so thick that even the flames of their torches flickered strangely, bending as if weighed down. Myra's eyes moved from statue to statue, bow ready in her grip. They look alive, she whispered. Thomas stayed close to her side, his torch shaking in his hand. Are they guardians? Did the builders make them to watch us? Samir walked closer to one statue and studied its smooth mask. No marks of tools, he said. The stone is too perfect. No man carved this. David, standing at the center of the chamber, raised his wrist device. Its faint blue light pulsed rapidly, faster than before. He could feel vibrations under his feet, as if the floor itself hummed in response to their presence. The chamber is awake, he said softly. Before they could ask what he meant, the sound began. At first, it was a whisper, faint as a breeze moving through dry grass. Then another joined, and another, until the chamber echoed with layers of murmurs. The explorers froze. The whispers came from the statues. Thomas' heart raced. He pressed his hands to his ears, but the voices slipped through. What are they saying? I cannot understand them. The whispers grew louder, weaving together like 100 threads of sound. Some words were sharp and clear in tongues none of them knew. Others shifted into familiar sounds, fragments of human languages, English, Arabic, and many others, broken pieces repeating again and again. Myra gritted her teeth, trying to stay focused. It is madness. The voices of the dead. But David listened carefully. He stood still, closing his eyes as the whispers surrounded him. To him, they were not meaningless noise. Patterns moved within the sound, like notes of a hidden song. His brow furrowed, and then his eyes opened with sudden understanding. They are warnings, he said. His voice was steady despite the storm of whispers. Not from one voice, but many. These statues are not just stone. They are holding what is left of the explorers before us. The pyramid captured their thoughts, their last words, and now it speaks them back. The others stared at him in disbelief. Samir shook his head. Impossible. Stone cannot hold voices. David turned to face him, the blue light of his device glowing on his wrist. This pyramid is not only stone. It is a machine. Machines can record, can remember. These are not statues. They are vessels, keeping what the pyramid swallowed. The whispers swelled, as though reacting to his words. The chamber trembled, and some statues leaned forward slightly, as if straining to be heard. For a moment, Myra swore she saw faint light flicker beneath one of the masks. Toma clutched her arm in fear. They are looking at us. David raised his voice, speaking to the chamber itself. If you remember them, then remember us too. We are not here to vanish like they did. We are here to know your truth. The voices shifted. The whispers grew sharper, as if answering. A single phrase repeated in different tongues, overlapping in an eerie chorus, deeper, deeper, deeper. The glowing carvings on the walls lit up once more, shaping into a path that led out of the chamber. Samir growled in frustration. It is leading us deeper again. Always forward, never back. Myra kept her bow steady, though her voice was heavy. It has never let anyone leave. It swallows, but it wants us to keep walking until we reach its heart. The explorers moved slowly across the chamber. The statues loomed on either side, their whispers never ceasing. Some words pleaded for help, others warned of traps, and others spoke only of endless hunger. As they passed the final row of statues, David felt a sudden pull in his mind. A single whisper rose above the rest, clear and direct in his own tongue. Human, stand, resist. He froze, staring at the statue nearest to him. Its mask seemed to tilt slightly, as though watching. Myra noticed his stillness and asked quickly, "What is it?" David shook his head. "A message. For me. For us." The others exchanged uneasy looks but did not question him further. At the far end of the chamber, the new passage opened, glowing faintly with the same light as the living map. The air beyond it was colder, and the pulse of the pyramid grew stronger, steady like a heartbeat. Before stepping forward, David turned back once more to the chamber of statues. Their whispers had softened again, blending into a low hum. Though their words were broken and fading, the meaning was clear. All those who had come before wanted only one thing: for someone to reach the end. David raised his torch high and stepped into the passage. "It is not only hunger," he said firmly. "This pyramid is waiting for something. And we must find out what." The others followed, their footsteps echoing into the unknown, as the chamber of voices sank back into silence behind them. The passage narrowed as David and his companions moved forward, the glowing path pulling them deeper into the pyramid. The air was heavy, carrying a faint thrum that grew stronger with every step. It was not the sound of stone shifting, nor the echo of their footsteps. It was a pulse, steady and slow, like the beat of a living heart. Myra tightened her grip on her bow. "Do you hear it? The walls are breathing again." Thomas' torch shook in his hand. "Not breathing," he whispered. "Beating. Like something alive beneath the stone." David kept his eyes on the path, his device glowing brighter as if it fed on the rhythm. "Yes," he said quietly. "We are close. This is not just a pyramid. It has a center, and we are walking toward it." The corridor bent sharply and then opened into a vast chamber unlike any they had seen before. At its center floated a gigantic crystal, suspended in the air with no chains or supports. It pulsed with light, each glow spreading through the chamber like a wave. The beat of the crystal was the heartbeat they had followed, steady and powerful. Samir's jaw tightened. So this is its heart. The floor beneath the crystal rippled with every pulse, as if the whole pyramid drew life from it. The walls glowed faintly with veins of light that stretched outward, carrying the rhythm through the entire structure. Toma gasped, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "It is alive. The whole pyramid lives because of this." David stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the crystal. The device on his wrist glowed in time with the pulses, syncing perfectly with it. He felt the rhythm not only in his ears but in his chest, pressing against his own heartbeat. "The pyramid listens," he said. "It is waiting for something." As he approached, the crystal flared with sudden brightness. The pulse quickened, and the chamber shook with a low hum that rattled their bones. Myra raised her bow, ready to fire, though she knew arrows would do nothing against such a thing. Samir steadied his rope and hammer, his instincts screaming to fight or flee. David, however, did not step back. He lifted his hand, pressing the device against the crystal. The moment it touched, the hum changed. The light dimmed, the pulses slowed, and the entire pyramid seemed to hold its breath. The others froze, staring at him. Myra's voice trembled. "David, what did you do?" The crystal responded with a burst of light. Images filled the chamber, projected in the air like living shadows. Figures appeared, tall beings with elongated limbs, their faces hidden beneath strange masks. They worked around the crystal, shaping the pyramid, carving its halls, and feeding it with energy. Samir stared in disbelief. "The builders. These are the ones who made it?" The vision shifted. The beings entered their own creation, walking its halls. The walls moved against them, trapping them in shifting corridors. One by one, they vanished, swallowed as the explorers had been. The pyramid pulsed stronger, feeding on them, their forms fading into the stone. Toma covered his mouth, his voice breaking. "It devoured them too. Even the ones who built it?" David's jaw tightened as he studied the vision. The crystal pulsed faster, showing more. The builders had failed. Their machine turned against them, demanding something they could not give. And so it consumed them, leaving only echoes in its chambers. The vision ended, and the crystal pulsed again, but this time the rhythm was different. The beat matched David's own heartbeat. The pyramid was not only showing him its past, it was speaking to him now. The walls shifted around them, narrowing the exits until only one remained, a passage leading deeper still. The crystal's light focused entirely on David, as though it had chosen him. Samir stepped forward, anger and fear in his voice. "No. It wants you alone. That is how it takes us, one at a time." David shook his head slowly. "No, Samir. This is different. It has tested many before, but none passed. The builders failed. Every explorer failed. But it waits because it has not found what it seeks. Myra's eyes narrowed. And you believe it seeks you? David did not look away from the crystal. Not me alone. It seeks something human. Something only we can give. The pulse grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The crystal flared brighter, its glow wrapping around David like a living chain. The others shielded their eyes, unable to look directly at it. Thoma's voice cracked with fear. It is pulling him in. But David stood firm, his body shaking but his eyes steady. He pressed his hand harder against the crystal, and the glow steadied. The pyramid responded not with force, but with silence, as if waiting for his answer. Myra lowered her bow slowly. It listens to him. Just him. The chamber grew still, the heartbeat of the pyramid slowing to match David's own. He felt the weight of countless voices pressing at the edge of his mind, the same whispers from the statues, now sharper and stronger. They did not plead or warn, they demanded. Samir's fists clenched. What is it asking? David's voice was low, strained but clear. It asks for will. For the strength to resist. Not flesh, not gold. It feeds on failure, but it waits for someone who does not break. The crystal pulsed one last time, and then everything fell silent. The glowing veins in the walls dimmed, and the chamber became still as stone. The pyramid was no longer moving, no longer breathing. It was waiting for David's choice. The silence inside the chamber pressed against them like a heavy weight. The great crystal floated in the center, glowing faintly, its rhythm slow and steady, like a giant heart waiting for David to answer. The walls no longer shifted. The floor no longer breathed. The entire pyramid seemed to hold still, watching him. Myra lowered her bow but did not let go of the string. Samir stood stiff with his hammer in hand, ready to act if danger struck. Toma, trembling, looked from the crystal to David, his young voice breaking. Why does it only want you? Why not us? David kept his hand against the glowing surface. The light wrapped around his arm like a chain, not pulling him in, but binding him to its will. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, his body shook. Images flooded his mind, visions of the builders who had created the pyramid. He saw their long figures bending under the weight of their own creation, trying to master it, failing again and again. He saw their pride turn into fear, and then into silence as the pyramid consumed them. And beneath it all, he heard the same demand: yield, or resist. He opened his eyes, his breath heavy. It does not want my body. It wants my will. It tests if I will break as the others did. Samir frowned. Then resist it? You are strong enough. David shook his head. It is not strength of arm that it seeks. It presses against the mind. It tries to crush spirit, not flesh. That is why the builders failed. That is why the others were swallowed. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if to confirm his words. The chamber trembled faintly, dust falling from the high ceiling. Toma stepped back in fear, clutching his torch tighter. Myra studied David's face. His eyes were steady, though sweat ran down his skin. If you resist, what happens? She asked. David's voice was calm but strained. If I stand firm, it may release us. If I yield, we will vanish like the rest. The crystal pulsed again, and a wave of pressure filled the chamber. The others staggered, gripping their heads as the sound vibrated through their bones. But David bore the full weight. The light surged through his body, pressing into his mind like a storm. He felt as if the stone itself tried to bend his thoughts, forcing him to surrender. Whispers filled his head, louder than before. They came not from the statues but from the crystal itself. Voices layered one upon another, pleading, demanding, commanding. Bow, yield, break. David gritted his teeth. His knees shook, but he did not fall. His heart thundered in his chest, but he forced himself to breathe steady. Samir shouted, his voice nearly drowned by the hum. "Do not give in. Fight it." But David knew brute force would not save him. This was not a battle of strength but of will. He steadied himself, focusing not on the storm but on a single thought, that he was human. That humans endured what others could not. The crystal pressed harder. Images filled his mind again. He saw deserts swallowing cities, storms tearing down towers, time erasing entire civilizations. He saw the builders themselves, their tall forms collapsing under the pressure, their spirits crushed. The pyramid had always won. But then another image rose within him, not from the crystal, but from his own memory. He remembered the villagers warning him not to come, their fear carved deep into their faces. He remembered Hassan's trembling hands when he spoke of his brother. He remembered the courage of Myra, Samir, and Toma, walking beside him even though they knew the danger. And he remembered the truth that had always set humans apart: they did not bow to despair. They endured storms, hunger, fear, and time itself, and still they stood. David raised his head. His voice was quiet but firm. "I will not yield. I will not break. We are human, and we endure." The crystal shuddered, the light flaring so bright that Myra and the others had to shield their eyes. The hum rose to a scream, shaking the chamber as if it would split apart. The floor cracked, sending glowing lines racing across the stone. Myra reached for David, shouting, "David!" But he held his ground, both hands against the crystal now, his whole body trembling under the force. His teeth clenched, his eyes blazing with defiance. The voices inside his mind shrieked, pressing harder. "Bow, yield, fall," he answered with a single word. No, the crystal froze. For a moment, the entire pyramid was silent, holding its breath. Then the pulse slowed. The pressure lifted. The light around David dimmed until only a faint glow remained. He fell to one knee, gasping for breath, but he was alive. The pyramid had not swallowed him. It had yielded. The chamber shifted, and the walls opened to reveal a new path wider than any they had seen before. The air that flowed from it was fresh, carrying not the heavy weight of stone but a cool breeze, as though it led to the world outside. Samir helped David to his feet. "You did it," he said, awe in his voice. "You stood where the builders fell." David steadied himself, his eyes still on the crystal. "No. Humanity did. That is what it sought. That is what it has always waited for." The crystal pulsed one last time, faint and steady, no longer demanding but quiet, as if satisfied. The pyramid was no longer their prison. It was listening. David turned to his companions. "It is not over yet. One final step remains." And with that, they walked toward the open path, the last passage that would lead them to the true end of the pyramid's trial. The last passage stretched before them, wide and glowing with a soft, steady light. Unlike the earlier corridors, this one did not shift or close. It remained open, as though the pyramid itself had stepped aside to let them through. David walked slowly, his legs still heavy from the struggle with the crystal. Samir stayed close, ready to support him, while Myra kept her bow steady, eyes sharp, and Toma followed with nervous steps, his torch casting long shadows on the walls. For the first time since they had entered, the pyramid felt calm. There was no whispering from the walls, no breathing stone beneath their feet. Only the slow, steady rhythm of silence guided them forward. At the end of the passage, they entered a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above, glowing faintly like a sky of dim stars. At the center stood a raised platform, smooth and round, with carvings that spiraled outward like waves. On the platform rested a smaller crystal, pulsing faintly, not with power but with quiet life. David stopped before it. His device glowed once more, sinking to the crystal's rhythm. He raised his hand, but this time he did not touch it. Instead, he simply stood before it, waiting. Myra whispered, "What is this place?" David's eyes softened. The heart of the test. The final choice. As he spoke, the smaller crystal flared, and visions filled the chamber once more. They saw the pyramid as it had once been freshly built, shining beneath alien suns. The builders stood proudly around it, their hands raised, believing they had created the perfect sentinel. But pride turned to sorrow. The pyramid shifted against them, demanding not treasure or flesh, but strength of will. One by one, the builders entered, and one by one, they broke. Their voices, their thoughts, their very selves, were drawn into the stone. The pyramid fed not on their bodies but on their surrender. The vision changed. The faces of countless explorers flashed by human and alien alike. They all entered with courage, but none resisted long enough. Their last words echoed in the chamber, fragments of despair and fear. Finally, the vision showed David, standing before the great crystal, his voice steady as he said, "No." The chamber fell silent, the vision fading. The smaller crystal pulsed brighter, and for the first time, its rhythm was gentle, not demanding. It waited for him. Samir spoke, his voice hushed. "What does it want now?" David looked at the crystal, his expression calm. "It asks for an answer. Not a test of strength, but a choice. Will we allow it to continue its cycle, or will we end it here?" Thomas swallowed hard. "If we end it, what happens?" David shook his head. "I do not know. But if it continues, more will come, and more will be swallowed. The pyramid will keep feeding forever." Silence settled over them. The choice was heavier than any trap or trial. Myra lowered her bow and stepped beside David. "Then end it?" No more voices added to its walls. Samir placed a hand on David's shoulder. "You have carried us this far. Do what must be done." David stepped onto the platform. The smaller crystal pulsed brighter as he approached, its light reaching toward him like gentle hands. His device glowed until it burned, then shattered, falling to the floor in pieces. The pyramid no longer needed it. It listened only to him. He placed both hands on the crystal. Immediately, the chamber shook with a deep hum, the sound of the pyramid's life trembling in its bones. The walls glowed, veins of light racing outward from the platform. The entire pyramid stirred awake. The voices returned, rising in a final chorus, not in despair, but in hope. The echoes of those swallowed long ago filled the chamber, their words weaving together. "Stand, and, free." David closed his eyes. His heart beat steady, his mind unbroken. He spoke clearly, his voice strong enough to echo through the stone. "No more. You will not take another. Humanity does not exist to be tested. We walk our own path." The crystal flared with blinding light. The hum rose into a roar, then broke apart into silence. The chamber trembled as cracks split the walls, light pouring out like rivers. The statues in the chamber of voices shattered, releasing faint shadows that drifted upward like smoke, free at last. The shifting corridors stilled. The hungry floors hardened into simple stone. The pyramid's pulse faded, no longer alive. Myra shielded her eyes, whispering, "It is ending." The light dimmed, and the chamber grew quiet. The smaller crystal crumbled into dust in David's hands, leaving only emptiness. When the shaking stopped, the air shifted. A gust of wind swept through the passage, carrying the cool scent of the open desert. A new doorway had appeared at the chamber's far side, sunlight streaming through. They had reached the exit. The four of them stepped out into the blazing desert. Behind them, the pyramid stood silent and still. No longer breathing, no longer shifting, it was only stone now, a tomb emptied of its hunger. Samir looked back, his eyes wide. "We are the first to leave." Toma fell to his knees in the sand, laughing with relief. "We are alive. We are free." Myra looked at David, her voice soft but firm. You ended it? The pyramid is finished. David stared at the dark structure, its black walls gleaming under the sun. He felt no triumph, only a deep calm. No. Humanity ended it? That is the answer it could never swallow. We endure, and we choose our own fate. The desert wind rose, covering the entrance with drifting sand. The pyramid was silent once more, not alive, not waiting, only a shadow of what it had been. And the explorers walked away, leaving behind the place that had swallowed so many. For the first time, the pyramid had not claimed its prey. It had listened, and it had yielded to the will of a human.